hard for the kids to have when they first walk in. You can too. So everyone, you're not supposed to touch them when you first walk in. Everyone is just going to observe. You're going to look at this straw. So there's 30 of them. Okay. So you're just going to look at this straw. So you're going to have them set it on the table. And initially, they're going to just look and see what you think of it. So what do you think of it? What do you think? So if you're just looking at this, how would you describe it? Like you can't smell it and can't feel it. Just looking at it, how would you describe it? What do you guys think? What is it? How do you think it feels? Oh, you don't want to be next to that. Mm-hmm. So it's actually a study in visual texture. So if they're looking at it, you're going to write on a board. You'll write down, and I don't have a board. You'll write down on the whiteboard their words. So what would you say? What do you think it feels like? This straw. You could just yell out, and I'll pretend I'm writing. Crunchy. Dry. What do you think it feels like? Prickly? Rough? Yeah, so looking at it, you'll get them to write as many adjectives as you can. Then the next step is you're going to have them, this is going to be tricky if you've got really young kids, but the next thing is they're just going to open it and then they're going to smell it. So then they're going to give you adjectives, what it smells like. So they're not allowed to touch it yet. And before you really get started, you're like, okay, this makes a big mess, so we're not going to play with it. We're not going to throw it at each other. We're going to just, so first they're going to look at it and give you adjectives. Then they're going to smell it and give you adjectives. And then when you get all that, so you'll be like, I don't know, it's like musky and smells like a farm, like grass and, I don't know, what do you guys think? Earthy. Good. So just try to get as many adjectives as you can out of them. And then they can feel it. They can reach their hand in and just kind of feel it. And then they hopefully, as you're progressing, they'll get the hang of it. And they'll start giving you more adjectives so that, like, bristly or, your TK kids are not going to say, the same words as your 5th or 6th grade kids, but hopefully you'll get a bunch of adjectives for it. That's the whole point of it. And so there's enough for everybody to do that. And so the whole point of this, you'd say that, okay, so everybody that's had fame before, what are the 4 art elements? Can anyone raise their hand and get one of the 4 art elements? Color, good. Texture, good.
Light
and shadow.
Line.
And line's always the one they have the hardest time with because, and I usually have this out, and I test them at the beginning. Every time I give a lesson, I always test them. This was the same one, Celeste, this is the one this is 30 years old or more, I think. Yeah. So, but it's hard, a lot of the kids can't read this top line. But by the time they're in 1st or 2nd grade, if you've been doing this every time, they will totally know what those 4 art elements are. So, as you can see, we're going to talk about texture today. Based on this straw, we're going to talk about texture and how texture, and you can wear, okay, so if you have, sorry, I'm so disorganized. If you have overalls, which I don't, if you have overalls, you can wear them. If you don't have overalls, you can just put this on over your, it makes you look like you're wearing overalls. And then I have a couple more. I have kid overalls that I've cut down the sides so that the kids can wear them as well. And then I have a farmer's hat. I don't think this fits my head. Yeah, it kind of does. So you'll go in and if you have like a flannel shirt, I'll put a couple flannel shirts in, but I'm giant, so they'll be big. But it's fine if they're big. So then you'll just dress up like a farmer. Is that cool? Yeah? Okay. So, and they suggest the music that you play at the very beginning isn't the Happy Farmer. So on YouTube, I looked through the supplemental music and the regular music, and there isn't, Melody is a Robert Schumann piece that is really common on YouTube. You can just find it, and it can be the very first one that you play. and if you just play it on your phone, I have, most of you know, I have a couple of wireless speakers that you can hook up to your phone, and you can play it for everybody. Other than that, you can play Happy Farmer if you want at the very beginning. So you'll do the little straw activity, and sorry, I'm already totally off. I have to make sure that I cover everything. So what am I dressed like? Farmer, and I'm a happy farmer, right? So I am dressed like a farmer, and when we're talking about the person that painted this painting, he farmed at a time, a long time ago, before modern farming equipment. So he farmed. He was born in 1525. And so when they farmed, they didn't use big tractors, they didn't use all the modern farming equipment that we use today. They actually used a different tool. And if you can see down here in this corner, can you see the tool that they're using? Does anybody see that big, weird, there's a few of them in the picture. This one here they're holding. Do you know what that is? A scythe, yeah. And so a lot of the kids aren't going to know what that is, but a scythe. And then I have a couple of, just so the kids know how to. Sorry, oh, here it is. Okay, so here's scythe. That's what it looks like, the word. So that's a scythe. And they would harvest that. So instead of having a big tractor, they would harvest the wheat, the grain, with a big metal sharp scythe. And they would put them, if you look in here, why do you think they're little teepees? Does anyone know what these things are?
Wheat haystacks.
They're the haystacks. They actually have a name. They call them sheaves. Did you say that? Sheaves. So, and they would dry them that way. They would put the straw into sheaves, into these little wigwam teepee things, so that they wouldn't mildew. And that's how they used to, back in the day, before they had all of the modern equipment. That's how they would do that. So, so Pieter Bruegel, his name is he's from the Netherlands. The guy that painted this. Pieter isn't spelled like P-E-T-E-R, it's P-I-E-T-E-R. And his last name is hard to pronounce. When you see it, it looks like, they usually make the kids pronounce it, Bruegel. And so you can actually, he went by Bruegel, and in the Netherlands you hear Bruegel, but sometimes you'll see an H in the name as well. And so he was from a family that did a lot of painting, and his sons were named Pieter. He had his son named Pieter Bruegel, and in order to distinguish them, he was Pieter Bruegel the Elder, and they'll call him Bruegel the Peasant or Bruegel the Elder. That would be this guy. He had sons, and the sons actually they put the H in, and sometimes that was pronounced Bruegel. But he's Pieter Bruegel, or Bruegel the Elder, and yeah. Okay, so I'm totally kidding. Sorry, guys. So when you look at this, one thing about the reason that I showed you the straw is if you look at his painting, he's able to show the texture of the straw, the texture of the tree, the texture of the leaves. He is really big into texture. And so when you look at this, obviously you can't feel the texture of it. And so the contrast was last year, in TK you won't have that with the TK kids, but if the kids had FAME last year, the one painting that we talked about texture with was the water lilies. It was Ammonia's water lilies. And so I have this one. And so if they remember from last year, you can see in these water lilies where the paint is actually really heavy and thick, and it implies texture. But it's obviously, this is a smooth canvas, but they wanted to kind of show that, here's another example, it's not a realistic, this is realistic, he liked everything to look really real. But this one, just to show, to kind of tie in where we've talked about texture. So that was with the water lilies. Okay. Let's see. So what time of day do you think it is? If you're just looking at this painting, what do you think the time of day is? Can you tell?
After lunch.
So yeah, so they're stopping, right? And so it looks like they're eating. So you can tell that it is probably around noon. If you look really carefully, you can see if it were late, you would notice shadows. So that was so the earlier in the morning or the later in the afternoon, you'll see shadow, like the tree, whichever direction. So you're not seeing a lot of shadow. The shadow would be straight down, right? And so, I forgot to put this is the name of it, the harvesters. So these are the harvesters. So I drew an example from the book last night. I drew this. So you can see if you have, so this is from the book. If you have sun directly overhead, like with a scarecrow, and I do actually have a scarecrow I forgot to bring. It's just a little one on a stick, so I'll bring that as well. If you have a scarecrow, or if you have, if you're just standing and directly under the sun, your shadow is going to be right under, everything is going to be straight down. If you've got the sun on this side, the shadow will be to the side, right? So this just, it's just to illustrate shadow. And you can talk to the kids. If you bring a child up to show, you can actually, you've shown that. So do you want to volunteer? He's like, no. Okay, so you'll bring, so I have this sun, and so you'll bring a child up there, and so just to test them so that you know that they understand that. You say, okay, now the sun is right here, and this person is standing right here. If you put it right here, where's the shadow going to be? It's going to be right down here. If it's lower, is it going to be longer or shorter? It's going to be longer this direction. If it's right on top of them, where's the shadow? So that's so that the kids can really get the concept of where the shadow goes when you, yeah. So, okay. I'm probably doing it all out of order. Let's see. Oh, and so then when they talk about sunshine and shadow, they also, there's perspective. They want you to do this little example with perspective. Where, so the kids, they're going to have to really, it's hard for them to do that, but they're going to hold their thumb up like that, and they're going to measure the top joint of their thumb. And then they're going to close one eye, and they're going to move their thumb back here. And then they'll realize that, when you're moving back. So then you'll talk about the people in the front of the picture are really big. The people in the back of the picture are really small. And why do they do that? It's to show that they're further back, to show perspective, to show the distance. And so it's a really pretty easy way to show kids how that works. And so then you'll talk a little bit about the perspective in this, where you see this teepee is really big, the ones that are further back are smaller, and you can kind of just show the bushes and the houses and everything, and how it shows the depth of it. And it's actually almost a bird's eye view, the way that he's taken this, the way he's painted this. And he's done that in a few different. Now, I thought it was really fun. We have, there are two other things to cover before we move on to music. We've got this. We got really lucky. And we have art for we have a secondary art print for every artist now. I have to map most of them, but this one I just finished this one. This one is, so this is the harvester's meal. So this is the harvester's, and this is the harvester's meal. So it's to kind of show the contrast, where this is really focusing on the people in it. And this one, you can actually really see the perspective difference. This is a bird's eye. You really are seeing them from above, right? This one isn't quite like that. It's a lot more, you'll still see the perspective, but it really focuses on them eating in the front. And the realistic look, he didn't try to make people look prettier than they were. A lot of his faces are like kind of almost gargoyle-like looking. But so you can show just the contrast in the colors. Very similar, you can tell it was painted by the same guy. But you can kind of have the kids point out what the differences are. And then I have this one for texture as well. We used this before, where you can see, physically what the texture is, and then what that would look like. So it was the real and implied texture. So that was however you want to present texture in your lesson. I have all of these visuals. If you spend a lot of time on the straw, though, you may not need to go into depth on the other texture. But it does kind of help, like if you're looking at the texture of the tree, you can see that is a very detailed part of it, not just the straw. Okay, and Bruegel, actually, they don't know a ton about him. He was born in the 1500s, but one thing that's interesting about him, at the time that he was painting, Michelangelo and Raphael had just died. And the focus back then was really all Bible. Everything, all of the artwork back then was really all religious. But in the Netherlands at the time, if you could be persecuted and killed based on your religious beliefs. So we don't really know much about what his religious affiliation was. But he didn't really like to paint religious subjects anyway. He liked to paint peasants and ordinary daily tasks. So he wasn't a peasant. They call him Bruegel the peasant because he would dress up as a peasant and go paint them. But he wasn't. He was more well off than that. But he did dress like a peasant and go and paint in their communities and try to get all of the real life. And they did a lot of proverbs. So it's real popular at that time. It kind of switched over where like proverbs like what were the ones that I wrote down? Oh, don't cry over spilled milk. Don't count your chickens before they're hatched. A lot of the paintings will actually be a proverb themselves. So there's one that's called the blue cloak, and it's the proverb, he hangs his cloak according to the wind, which isn't a common proverb, but it's like that he's an opportunist. So that painting is from that. So I'm going to try to get a copy of just a small, even if it's just a small print, I'll try to have like an 8x10 so you guys can show a couple of the proverb paintings that he did. Let's see. So when you look at this painting, does the texture make you, how does the texture set the mood of the painting, do you think? Like, what's the mood in this painting? Do they look really energetic? Do they feel tired and kind of lazy feeling? Do you think it's the texture that sets the mood? The color, yeah. It's really, the texture is not. It's the color that sets the mood. And so then they want you to talk a little bit about how warm colors are going to make you feel a lot more lethargic. It's a lot more relaxing when you have yellows and browns and stuff. That's the warm colors. When you switch over to like blues and stuff, that's going to tend to be a lot more energetic. So, and it helps that they're all lying down so that, it's the colors and the fact that they're lying down after eating their afternoon meal. Okay.
I think it's interesting how, when I look at that picture, that tree trunk is so prominent.
Yeah.
Like, it really, I feel like my eye goes to that a lot because of the texture.
Yeah, and he's really big. And it focuses that line that then basically points down to the people. Yeah, it really is a very prominent feature in the picture. Because like you've got a real detail on this church behind here, and you can barely see it because of the focus on the tree. So this, when you switch over to the music, you can talk about how the color creates the mood, and the line of it. But the color creates the mood. But Robert Schumann is our composer. Robert Schumann loved to create pieces that would create mood, but they were kind of like pictures with music. And so a lot of times he actually wrote music that would describe a person. And so like I would have a song called Celeste, and you listen to it and you think, oh, that sounds just like Celeste. And people would actually be shocked by how accurate his musical descriptions were. A lot of times they would just laugh. They would be like, "Oh my gosh, that's shocking! How accurate it was." So he was very, very good at it. But the interesting thing about Robert Schumann, he is one of 5 children. He's the youngest of 5 children, and he came from an absolutely unmusical family. There was nobody in his family that was musical, and he was the youngest. And he would sneak downstairs and play the piano in the middle of the night, which would, of course, wake everybody up. And the fact that they were not a musical family, but they had a piano, it's interesting. But I guess everybody had a piano in that class. So he was an attractive, really like handsome kid, and he was spoiled because he was the baby in the family. But his family actually had him. They registered him for law school. He was starting law school, and he was like, "Forget it. I don't want to be a lawyer. I want to be a musician." So, and he was really serious about being a concert pianist. He was about 17. He really wanted to be a concert pianist. So, because your 4th fingers, if you play the piano, 4th fingers are the one finger that is hard to raise. He actually created a contraption that would make him strengthen that finger. It damaged the muscles in his finger. So he never was able to be a concert pianist because he had damaged his own hand. And I was reading 2 different accounts, and they say one was the left hand, one was the right, so I don't even know which hand it was that he damaged, but it was a 4th finger. So he didn't become a concert pianist, but he did then focus his attention on composing music. And he ended up marrying the daughter of his teacher from years before. So Clara Wieck was his wife, and she was a concert pianist. She was amazing. So she actually made his music famous by playing it all over because she was that good. She was a really, really amazing pianist. Let's see. So the music, if you want, so this is called the Happy Farmer. So it ties into our farm theme. So like that. So you've got. So if you play the piano, I would do it because I play it like half the speed, or maybe even slower than that, so that the kids can really hear. So it's dun dun, and I actually have some big rain boots, farmer boots, for you guys to wear, and I don't know if they're size 10.5 women, so as long as you have feet smaller than mine, you can wear them. But they're big farmer boots, they're knee high, but I couldn't find them this morning, but I've got them. So that is to help them like kind of clump around, and then the kids can put them on if you do that as your activity. You'll have at least one farmer up there, have them put on the overalls, and then one wife that has the apron on, and I think it was an apron. Oh, and she's supposed to put her hand on her hip and wag her finger when it's her turn, and he's supposed to stomp his boots when it's his turn. And then the chicks, they'll go cheep cheep, but the chicks will have feather dusters, so that will just indicate that this is a chick, and they'll go cheep cheep. So when they go, so it's stomp stomp cheep cheep stomp stomp cheep. So you'll have the kids, you'll have to go a little slower, and you can actually have them sing it. Once you've played it through, you can actually have them sing it really slowly. So you just go stomp 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 stomp. So that's how you would, if you want to do the music part as your activity, you'd have them come up and do that. But otherwise, you would talk about melody and harmony, and how the melody is the farmer part. Dun 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 dun. That's the melody, and everything else is the harmony. And so because it's the first lesson, you can have an interesting melody, but adding all the other part, adding the little chicks, adding the farmer's wife's part in, makes it way more interesting, and that's what gives color to the music. And that's really, it's very simple. So you don't need to go into a lot of depth on the music because the music is so simple. It's a very, very simple tune. The other option you have for your activity, if you don't want to do that, and you want to go crazy, I only have 6 of these pieces of acrylic. So you would probably have to do, depending on how this works out, you would have 6 kids doing it at a time. So basically what they suggest to do is you make a finger paint mixture. And so there were 2 different ones. One was a wheat paste that had like a grainy texture, and one was a lot smoother. And you can actually make both kinds, but I would suggest not doing more than like 3 or 4 colors. And they'll just do one color. They'll pick the one color they want to do. And so you'll put that paint, you'll put a little bit on here, and they'll use their fingers. And if you want to bring extra tools, combs, or whatever, you can have them paint with their fingers, and then the way they make the print is you take the paper and put it over the top and then make the print. So depending on how the kids do, you could have one per table, and they just take turns. Depending on the age of your kids, they could do that and just take turns. They just have to wash the acrylic in between and then take that. So I have white art paper, white drawing paper that's in, it's not just copy paper, it's thicker. It's in the PTA rooms on the shelf. So if you want to do that, you can certainly do that.
What do you think about an alternative idea?
Any alternative.
Is maybe have the kids create some sort of image that has a shadow
Oh,
or perspective.
yeah.
I'm not sure what exactly.
Totally. You could, if you wanted, you could pick something. It could be farm related or not, but you could have them draw, especially
Like a pumpkin.
or a pumpkin. That would be perfect.
Oh,
If you, yeah, a pumpkin, because we did the sphere last year. If you picked a pumpkin and they drew that, and then they decide where they want to put their sun. And then you want to have them draw it on their paper wherever it is so that they can see that's where the shadow's going to go.
Some of the classes did do something very similar last
We
year.
had a million or something.
We did a sphere last year, and we had them do it with chalk.
We did it on black, it was reversed.
It was reversed on
We
chalk.
did it in my class.
Oh, you
Because they
did
were
it?
doing space
You
stuff.
can do
in my
anything
class.
you want, and they, yeah. So if you want, and so it's not a bad idea to have them do that, to just practice what they've done. Especially in the older grades, like in Dylan's class, they would probably really get into that. In the younger grades, if they didn't do the sphere, like I can imagine for first grade, it may be a lot more difficult. Finger painting might be where it's at, or the acting it out and stuff. So you want to figure out how much time, and then how patient your teacher is with mess and stuff like that. So I've got 8 teachers this year that are all really into fame, so they said it's fine, as messy as I want to get. So I'm not sure actually which one I'm going to do for this one. So I think I covered everything in a most haphazard way. Your lessons are going to be so much better.
I have a question for you. Could you use a laminated piece?
Mm-hmm. So I have those laminated mats. I have 30 laminated mats. They're just big like placemats that I laminated at the school board. Those are also in the PTA room. So these are just thicker, but the laminated mats are solid, flat laminated mats, and they're big. They're about this big. And so if you wanted to use that and everyone did it at the same time, you could do that as well. I use those mats so that anytime you've got a really messy art project, you can take them in, and then the teacher doesn't get as upset about them getting stuff everywhere. It gets on the mat. Of course, they have to clean the mat off.
So for the finger painting, you're saying they manipulate the paint on the mat,
on the mat or the acrylic,
and then
they
take the paper like almost like a press.
Yeah, it's like a print. Yeah, so they'll do that and print it off their little. So they can actually do more than one print if there's enough paint on it. But it is kind of fun. They can then do that at home if they want to take that. The recipe for the paste is, or for the paint is really easy. The wheat paste, the wheat paint is really, it's like flour and water and add a little tempera. But we have tons of tempera paint, so I'll probably just do red, yellow, green, and blue maybe, and have those in containers so that there's some paint in there if you want to use it in like Tupperware. And then if you want it, yeah, so then you can decide however you want. But I think this is pretty much all of the props that I'll have. If you have extra feather dusters, you can have more chicks come up. If you have extra aprons, or I have these overalls, and then I have 2 other pair, but they're small. And then I've got 2 aprons, and I only have 1 feather duster. So if you guys want to add to that, that would be great. So, hey, thank you for having me. I hope this helped. Last night I was like writing it, and the first time I teach the lesson, I'm always so disorganized. By the time I'm like 3 lessons in on the day that I teach, I feel like I know everything. I know the order I want to teach it in.
The straw Are there 30 of these?
Mhm.
Okay.
So there's 30 bags, and I have a lot of extra straw because I bought a big.
And they never really come out of the bag. It's just,
No,
okay.
so at first, and you really want them to look at them and give you a lot of adjectives just looking at it, because that's what they have to do with, looking at the painting anyway. They're not touching it. So so the looking and the smelling and then the touching, and you should have a big list, so then you can go back and refer to the different adjectives.
And then kind of compare
For
the
texture.
texture and be like, is this match what
Mhm.
you?
Yeah, and so then they can say, well, and the texture here. And then if you want to bring, so a lot of times with the little kids, I have them come up with their clothing and compare, like, because sometimes they'll have fleece on or they'll have corduroy, so that they get the feeling, like a lot of times with TK and K, it's hard to keep their attention. So getting them talking about texture, they do this and then say, okay, so how do your clothes compare to this rough straw? And they get really excited when they get called to the front with their texture. So yeah, ready? So yeah, it should be, yeah. If they're, yeah. You've been teaching this is your 3rd year, right? And is this your 3rd year as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, you've been teaching forever. So yeah, you kind of just figure out what works in with the younger grades, and then the really young kids, just trying to keep their attention is the big thing. So a lot of times, like with kindergarten and TK, I have them getting up and dancing like a whole bunch during or if they're starting to lose their attention, I'll have them, okay, look at what so-and-so's wearing, and then we start talking about the color and the texture and how it compares to the painting. It seems to get them to focus again.
At what grade do they stop wanting to get up and dance?
Oh, my 6th graders have all, it just depends on your class, but if you have, like my kids love it. So, yeah, I don't know why they're really into it. They'll get embarrassed sometimes, but it depends on how you present the activity. I'm really surprised sometimes the 5th and 6th graders what they're willing to do. Like have to remember, they are in elementary school. They are still kids, and so like a lot of times you'll have some kids that are too cool to do it, but you'll get plenty of kids that are, and especially if they've had fame a bunch, and if I've taught them fame a bunch, I know who they are, and I'll guilt trip them into getting up in front, and they'll feel silly and stuff. It's really, I don't know, I love fame. Obviously, I've dedicated a lot of time to this program.
Thank you all.
So yes, thanks for coming. I'm so glad you guys came.
So Laurel, is everything that you have, this is my first time, PTA closet?
Yeah,
Is
so
that
the
where-
PTA closet in the back will have a wagon with all this stuff in it.